It's funny, I heard you say that you were running over, like, all the sessions were running over, and it's kind of like a doctor's office. Once one session is running over, then the rest of them kinda catapult, right? All
Yes,
right.
yes, that's definitely the tendency. Yeah,
Yeah, it happens. All right, so we can see my presentation, yes?
we can. Yes.
Great. All right. So today we're going to talk about something really exciting, setting up the fixed asset module. Um, but before we get started there, let me give you a little bit. Sorry, all right, now I know what I'm doing. Okay, so as we said, I'm Mary Thompson, and by trade per se, I'm a Microsoft certified Dynamics 365 finance consultant. So I've got my certs, and I have worked as both an end user and a consultant across the AX platforms 2009, 2012, D365 finance, FinOps, whatever we're calling it these days, right? Um, so typically here's where we talk about where we work, and thanks to COVID, I'm currently seeking new opportunities, but it does give me a great chance to work on a passion project that I started a little over a year ago. I call it World Max, and basically the concept is empowering as many people as possible to reach their maximum potential through basically digital upskilling. So through courses like today and last weekend, different various user groups. I've got my first Power Platform user group meeting this week for Columbia, South Carolina. So we're really excited about that. And I'm also working on using the Power Platform and AI Builder to automate a lot of finance business processes. One that I'm currently working on is invoice processing, making it from the point where you get your PDF to essentially uploading a journal. All of it will be automated from that point, and then basically you just approve in the journal. Got some ideas around month-end closing, so that's what I do. And I am a little curious though, so we have some interactive questions. Let me put, can I grab this? So as you can see here, I've got a QR code. If you have a reader on your screen, you should be able to click in there and answer this question. And so basically, if you can see in here, this is not, okay. Like I said, we've had a lot of name changes, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with if you've been working with this product for a while. And it's always a little bit confusing, in my opinion, on what we're currently calling it or what to refer to it. So just for fun, I figured I would ask all of you what your opinion is and what you typically refer to it as. So let me grab my chat window here. All right, if you guys click in there, you can give me, it's my way of trying to do a poll. So great. So with that being said, we'll get started with today's agenda. And boy, do we have a lot to cover. So like I said, we're going to talk about the fixed assets and how they relate to finance and operations and how that overview looks. Then we're going to go through a couple different components that go into the fixed asset module, such as depreciation profiles, books, the fixed asset posting profiles, and of course the groups. We'll also need to take a look at the journal names as those relate to setting that up, and then the parameters, and then we'll get to the fun stuff, which is the demo. All right, so first, I figured I'd break it down kind of simple. I know that we've got a lot of really, really smart people here on the phone, but just in case we're lucky enough to have some new people that are kind of new into this area, I wanted to make it a little simple. So first off, right, an asset is anything that's owned. It can be tangible or not tangible, and it has a value that a company holds on to and sits in their balance sheets. So it can be current or fixed, and current assets are going to include things that are easy liquidable, which means taking an asset into cash, and how long and how easily and how much effort it takes to go into that. So cash is obviously one. Then you have credit cards, and we have things like accounts receivables and money that you expect to come in from your customer, kind of piggybacking off that revenue recognition aspect. Additionally, on a fixed asset, so on the current assets, usually you can transfer them in about a year. But fixed assets will take longer than that. And they include things like property that you build your plants on, buildings, equipment, and equipment. A lot of times people refer to that as PPE, so plants, property, and equipment. Additionally, there's a few things that make fixed assets a little unique. Like I said, not that this makes it unique, but they do in fact sit on the balance sheet, and they're going to be in your long-term asset section. The unique thing about fixed assets as well is the depreciation concept, right? So the value of it decreases over time. And with that, you'll have a depreciation expense and an accumulated expense. So FinOps allows us to take care of that. And then, of course, there's also some tax implications around that depreciation, right? So what you want for your accounting books may not be exactly what you want for your tax best benefits. So being able to separate those two in finance and operations is a key component of this system. The only things that we don't depreciate though is going to be land and what's called CIP, construction and process, or when you're building assets, you're not going to depreciate them until they go into use. Here is a wide overview of the different elements that Dynamics 365 FinOps handles. As you can see, it goes across a lot of different things. And what makes it really unique and complicated is that there's a bunch of different international standards, as well as country and local accounting standards that a corporation has to deal with. That can be really overwhelming, but luckily the system allows some functionality that helps with this. So some of those things that rules may be determining on are acquisitions, disposals, depreciations, or when we have to write up or write down a fixed asset. All right. So one area that's recently new, I believe it came out maybe last year, 2019, is the asset management. We're not going to touch on that too much today, but I do think it's a really neat new functionality. Basically, it is a management side of the fixed assets. So making sure that a company can reduce cost and downtime through its production by having preventative and break down maintenance structures. It allows you to easily schedule maintenance and request jobs. You can also create a checklist that gives kind of a standard operation for everyone across your organization. So maybe you have a large manufacturing company and you have, a decent sized maintenance team. Maybe they're on different shifts. Maybe you have several plants. It allows for some standardization in your maintenance department across your organization, which internally will lead to more cost-effective both production and costs. So as we're going to go over the fixed asset overview, here's a quick screenshot that I grabbed from the documents page. And I really like the way that this breaks it down. So here we'll start off at our fixed asset. And you see that the fixed asset has a book that's associated with that. And as we can see over here, the book has a depreciation profile, which drives that book, which drives the fixed asset. And then those asset groups are unique for each section as well. And then, of course, they are tied to the general ledger. So when we're getting started, we'll talk about the depreciation profiles first. And I'm kind of going to go in the order of which I would recommend you to configure this, because sometimes when you jump into the parameters, you're missing a bunch of sections. So to me, this is the most logical way to go through and set everything up so that each step you're not having any blanks. So I start with the depreciation profile, which is configuring how the asset will be depreciated. There's three key three key fields on the depreciation profile, and that's the depreciation method, the depreciation year, and then of course the frequency. As you can see, there are several out-of-the-box depreciation methods, and you can have more than one so that you can associate those to various books. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, you may want to use one particular depreciation, maybe straight line, for your accounting purposes, but then you might want to take like an accelerated depreciation rate for accounting purposes and for your tax purposes. So this allows you to be able to track both of those. And these are all the different options that you have. Additionally, so one thing that I like to say, there's factor in here. So a lot of these are pretty common, right? Straight line, service lines, reducing balance.
Pretty bad there.
Mary, you've got some bad sound issues.
Mary, there's a buzzing sound is coming. Hello, Mary. There's an issue with the audio. Can you please check?
Challenge, please.
Hi there, Mary. Just to let you know that there's a problem with your sound right now, or for some reason the sound is getting distorted very badly. So I just thought I'd mention that, Mary. So we've had to mute you. So if you can hear me, Mary, your sound, we can no longer hear you. We've had to mute you. There seems to be some sort of interference preventing us from hearing you. Let me see if I unmute you, if that's going to help. Okay, let's.
Can anyone hear me yet?
Yes, Mary. Yep, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that is just terrible. That's really phenomenal. So,
I don't know. Yes. So we can hear you now, Mary. That's great. So it was, yeah, for some reason something happened to the microphone for the past 10 minutes. We've been trying different things to see what we could do to
I
resolve.
finally see that. I was like, oh, let me pause. There's a lot of activity. Let me pause before I go to the demo.
Yeah.
And then I saw all of the comments. So that's really embarrassing. That's okay.
No, that's fine. So
you.
the thing is, it's good. So I think yep. So I think it should work now. I think it'll work. So yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, thanks again, Mary, for spotting that. And yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So what I'm going to do, and you guys can still hear me, right?
We can. Yeah, it's 100% clear now. Yeah.
All right. I'm going
It must have
to.
been the mic that short circuited or something. Yeah.
It's happened to me before. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the demo, I think then, because I think you guys at least saw my screens and I was just talking about what I'm going to demo. So I'm just going to go back and do that.
Sounds like a good plan. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let me actually stop this. Change this up a bit now. Okay. So what we're going to look at is we're going to take a look at the fixed assets, and I'm going to run through the same parameters that I just discussed in my presentation. So with that being said, we'll start with the depreciation profiles. Let me actually switch companies here real quick. Great. Okay. So here are the some of the out-of-the-box depreciation profiles that are already set up in this demo environment. And they're really easy to add. You just go in here and new and whatever you want to call it. We'll call this one test. And then, as I was showing before, you've got all these different depreciation methods. As you can see here, it's great to set one up for each one that pertains to your organization, because you may have one for accounting needs and you may have one for tax needs. So, on this one, you can see that they've got it set up like this, but then they'll probably use a different one for tax purposes. As I mentioned earlier, whether you heard or not heard, there's a factor method. And with the factor method, there's some different, if you put it under 50, it's to be degressive. And if you put this over 50, it will be regressive or progressive. And basically what this does is it manipulates the depreciation so that you can have a higher rate at the beginning of the asset life and then slowly decrease that. So some tax purposes are set up like that. So moving on from the depreciation profiles, the next thing that you need to set up is your books. And as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different books, but what you're going to do is on this one, they have an intangible one. So we don't see this one as depreciating, right? Because as we discussed earlier, you won't depreciate some of your land products. So your books hold your depreciation profile. And as you can see here, you can identify if you're going to put your depreciation on it. Then you can identify your depreciation profile that's associated with that book. Then if you need to have an alternative one, you can identify them here as well. Sometimes if you want to have a net book value at 0 or higher, you can identify your net book value here. And you also have the option if you want to post to the general ledger or not. By default, the system's going to go ahead and post it, but you can always just uncheck that if not. And then, so for some of the other ones, for tax ones, for the posting layer, you can identify if you want this to be the current posting layer or if you need it to be a tax or a different layer, so that when you're running your different proposals, you can pick that up. Of course, you can decide if you want to allow for negative book values, and sometimes I've seen a few cases where that's what they wanted. So this derived book is what I was talking about before. As you can see here, what this is going to do, every time a fixed asset is every time a fixed asset that's associated with this book has a transaction that's an acquisition adjustment, or a disposal of this particular book, what it's going to do is it will create a copy of that transaction in this book. And so that's what they call a derived book. It kind of moves down. That's the way that I like to look at it. If it prints up here, then it's going to make a copy of it down here. But you will only do this, the best practice is for acquisitions and your disposals, but not your depreciation, because that book cannot be updated. So you can only just use it for your acquisitions and your disposals. Next, after you have your books, I like to set up the fixed asset group. And so like I said before, these are the ones that are out of the box that are set up, but you can see that they've got different attributes. Basically, that's the way that I look at it, is the fixed asset group is kind of like this default holding shell. So the computers, right, are going to have a different approach than maybe the buildings, which are going to have a longer life. They've got a different capitalization threshold, or if you have land where you can't depreciate it. So your fixed asset groups kind of hold that. They give you some default values, but you don't actually, you can override them as well. But it's one of the only requirements when you add a fixed asset is it has to have a group, because this fixed asset group is then tied to a book, which is tied to the depreciation profiles, and those books are also tied to your posting profiles. So after you have your fixed asset groups, then you can look at your fixed asset posting profiles. What these are is, again, this is the activities of the different things, journals and stuff. So you have acquisition. When you drop this down, you can identify which main account and offset account that you would like for this type of journal to hit. So if you want your depreciation journal, you would have your different accounts here. But what you'll do when you're setting this up is you just add, if you need a different depreciation, like I said before, you can group these in different levels. So if we have it on a group, it's going to give it for an entire book, but you can also break it down to a more granular level and identify, maybe you want your office to hit a different main account than your machine, right? So then you can set these up like this. Oops. I need to identify a book. So that, and then if I wanted to do another one, and you can have all your groups, right? A lot of times this is how you're going to see this set up, is you're going to break this down into your groups, because most times you need these to hit different, different accounts than your land account. And then of course you can have an offset account, which makes this easier whenever you're doing maybe your depreciation journals. So some of that work is going to be automatically populated for you, which I think is always nice and easy to have defaults, less chance to go wrong. But of course you can't override your defaults. But you have to have these set up. If you try to run a journal and you get some type of error and says that your accounts aren't balancing, then you need to come here and make sure that you have all of your posting profile activities set up. Alternatively, we have the disposal section down here. And you have to set this up for sale and for scrap. But what this does is the system is designed to automatically reverse all of the transactions that were recorded whenever you're ready to dispose of that. Then what it does is it takes that net difference and it hits the gain in sale or gain and loss of the account that you identified down here. So you need to set up one for each group, or if a lot of times this is just going to be set on all. Maybe you just have one gain or loss account, unless you have multiple accounts. You can break it down again like we showed up here, breaking this down into different groups, or you can also set it on a fixed asset as well. You can break it down that far. After the fixed asset posting profiles, then we're ready to look at the parameters. So, like I said, I think that a lot of work has already, I keep saying I already said, but you guys didn't hear anything I said. So anyway, so with the depreciation, what we can do here is we have the capitalization threshold. And if you hit yes on the capitalization threshold, and let's say you purchase an item that is less than $1,000, it will still go ahead and create that as a fixed asset, but it's going to automatically set that fixed asset up to not depreciate because it's not aligned with the capitalization threshold here. What you can also do is allow for multiple acquisitions. When this comes in handy is sometimes you have to build on a fixed asset, right? So maybe you create a fixed asset shell, or you're building a plant and you're going to put it all into one fixed asset, but you need to add multiple things to it on a purchase order, so you can build the value of that fixed asset as you go, but be able to keep track of what each line item value is. What you do is you make sure that you have this parameter set to yes there. Then also there's this automatically create a depreciation adjustment. So basically automatically does that for you, or of course you can create it manually. And so you would just set that to no and you would take care of that for yourself. But I like the system to do the work for me most of the times. Guess I'm lazy. Then you have your fixed asset proposal. This is where those journal names, we'll take a look at those actually right now. So whenever we go into the journal name, you have to set this up as well. We have the fixed asset current entries. And then one of the key areas here is you need to set this up to be the fixed asset or post-fixed assets. You can always identify if you need it to be an approval, but you can also identify here which posting layer. So if you needed to have your different tax journals, then you would identify that you needed this to be on a tax level, and that's how you can be consistent in keeping an accounting book and a tax book. For the voucher series here, I'm sorry, actually it's right in here. For this new voucher, you have a couple different options. I think by default, most journals are on one voucher number only, but this one we need it to be set up to be in connection with the balance. You can also default your financial dimensions if you needed to. So jumping back down into the parameters, that's where those journal names go, so that you can identify which type of journal and how you want that to be looked at. So see here we have this tax journal. And when we look at it here, it will show that we have it as a tax posting layer. So we also have purchase orders. I really like this functionality. To me, it's kind of the beauty of having your ERP system all in one and it being super integrated like Dynamics 365 is because what you can do is you can create your purchase order, or even from a purchase acquisition, say, okay, I think that I need a new computer. So I can create a purchase acquisition, and this is where we're going to identify that purchase acquisition, when I receive that computer in, it will automatically create a fixed asset if we set this up here. That's what these are. It says, do you want to allow asset acquisition? So if you identify that as yes, and then, maybe you don't want everyone, right? Just to being able to create fixed assets from an acquisition. So you can identify different groups or approvers in that section as well. This is an ability to be able to essentially create a fixed asset on the fly, which means you don't have to have that fixed asset set up in the system before you receive it in. And if you do this here, whenever you receive it, it will automatically populate that, which is usually pretty helpful, especially if you have some workflows set up. It's easier to have that already in place. And then this will also check for a fixed asset whenever you're going through creation to make sure that you're not duplicating anything, which is always a nice practice to have to, especially if you have a large team and maybe there's some cross areas. Under these reason codes, so there's two different sections here. To me, I wish that there was a little bit more space on the screen, but so you can require a reason code. This section is different from this section, is kind of what I'm getting at. So you can require this or not. And then with the acquisition journal, I'm sorry, with these different reason code requirements, you can identify if you want to require, if you need an asset code for those parameters or for that activity. Then you can set your reason codes right here under your asset reasons. Then you can identify maybe the different ones that you need to set up there, and then they will be available. That, let's see here. I think that pretty much covers a lot of what I was going to go through for now. Let's go to the questions. Let's see what we got going on there, because this is, let me stop sharing my screen for a second and go to questions here. Okay, so can you address the issue with splitting fixed assets and the one voucher parameter? Yeah, I guess maybe if you want to, so I'll find, I think the thing is that you're going to have multiple transactions with it, so you need to be able to keep building it, and otherwise you're going to create a unique voucher each time, and it won't be linked to that fixed asset, I think is the what we're looking at here. Let's see, do we go back to, do we have any other questions? Let's see here.
Hello there. So I think there was a question from it was to do with the fixed asset groups. Well, I think they're asking if you could just touch upon the fixed asset group information. Just once again, I think they missed out a bit of information on that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that, yeah.
Maybe what I'll probably end up doing at some point is I can kind of record this and then make it available. So how would you handle splitting asset if we want to reclass? Let's see. Oh, let me show, I'm sorry, I was trying to share my screen.
I think Mary, I think we may have lost you. I think we may have lost Mary temporarily. Okay, let's see what questions we have. Okay, here we are. Omar one asking regarding the special depreciation allowance. with different percentage for different time periods. And Sauravdam's asking about, okay, is that answering questions related to the policy of the asset from the straight line to the straight line remaining by using same details of the fixed asset? Yeah. So yeah, it's always that obviously Mary's having some connection problems. That's fine, guys. So whilst we're waiting, oh, there we are. Mary's back. Mary is back.
I'm back. I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties right now, and I cannot get my system to.
Well, look, it's great that we're getting through it all. So it's fantastic, Mary, because you know we're still getting there. You know, you've managed to get through your presentation, which was really great. And there's actually lots of really good questions as well. So the last question was from Omar, who asked about the special depreciation allowance with different percentage for different time periods. He's asking how is it possible?
So, right. So what you do, and so I'm sorry, you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to have to talk through some of this stuff because I can't get my screen to come up. But what you do is those depreciations, it's already populated. So it shows 200%. The system already has it set up is 200%. So there's not that calculation for you to identify that different percentage. What you're going to do is identify more of the frequency period and then of course the starting value. Is that does that answer some of that?
And the other question is related to, which may have been answered. It is related. Let's see. It is very slow, isn't it? The network's very shoddy. It's but yeah, we're making the best out of the situation, and I'm just trying to read
I'll
the
turn
questions.
my camera off. Sometimes maybe that kind of cuts into it, so that might help.
What was that? Sorry, Mary.
Oh, I turned my camera off to maybe help with the feedback. Sometimes
okay,
that
I'll
just
try that. Yep, good point there. Let me try that.
eats up.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if that helps. There we go. It has. Yes. So now I can see all the questions.
So I see one here that says, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Mary. Yep.
I was going to say, I was trying to go back to, so how would you handle splitting an asset to multiple assets if you want to reclass a portion? So I think maybe you're talking about building them out. So you can, there's a functionality. If you go into that asset, there's some reclass options that allow you to identify what you want to reclass and what portion. So what I'm going to do in here is Lynn, I'm going to take down your information and I can get you some documentation that provides a better explanation of that since I'm not able to do that right now. And that's what I'm going to try to do on a lot of these since it's not going great, but that's okay. So that's what I'll do, Lynn. I know that's not a very clear answer, but what I'll do is I'll get you a quick demo shot on how to actually do that, and I'll make that available to everyone as well. So that's that answer. How about another one?
And whilst you're doing that, for obviously one final question, I am going to post, what I'd like everyone to do is, obviously Mary's got a post on LinkedIn. I'd like everyone to obviously follow her on her post. So I'm just going to share that in the chat. That way, at least you can stay in touch with Mary as well as get involved in the social media behind the event. We're also giving away prizes. Remember, we're giving away prizes for this event for the people who are the most interactive. We have a survey for people to complete based on their favorite sessions. We're looking to award prizes to both speakers as well as attendees. So I've just shared the LinkedIn post by Mary. Please, obviously, like, follow her, and yes, sorry, Mary. Please continue.
I promise I normally do a lot better than this too, y'all. Oh. Oh, okay. How can we change? I think I lost your ass.
Sorry, Mary, what was that? Was that another question?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought you were saying something.
So yeah, so okay, guys. I think yeah, we've covered that section now,
Yeah.
and I believe everyone's obviously answered. We've answered everyone's questions. It looks like. Are there any more questions? We've got a few more minutes for any more questions for Mary. So please, feel free to drop in. Oh, thank you. Yep. So you're getting some thank yous here, Mary, from Rohit.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And the others. So whilst everyone is thinking of questions and anything else related, I have posted the survey. Again, please remember to provide your feedback. We do have prizes. The prizes are Star Wars Lego and Mechanics Lego. So I'm just posting the pictures up off those prizes. Thanks to Docs42 and thanks to Nigel Frank for those prizes. So I'm just posting I've posted the link. So make sure you, obviously everybody does, if you want to, obviously, if you want to, interested in winning one of those prizes. Yep, so that's the links up. I'm just going to post a couple of pictures of what they are. So we do have I hope you're able to see this. And it gets uploaded. Okay. Just waiting for Teams to upload the files into the chat window. It's taking its time. It's fine. You'll find the links also are already in that survey that I've sent as well. Okay.